Justice Society of America, issue 3, Geoff Johns writing with Mikel Janin and Jerry Ordway on the art, which I noticed right away it wasn't Janin at the start of the book, because it's the Sergeant Rock stuff, and it's
right.
clearly looking different. But it's interesting though to do that.
I do like when they do that type of stuff in comics, where they use a different artist to denote a different story or a different timeline. I think it helps. It's one of those mediums that you can do that in, right? Because I mean, you can shoot things differently in a movie or a TV show, right? But still, it's not the same as a different art style. But yeah,
sure.
Also, Ordway has a very Silver Agey, I always thought, vibe to everything. So this starting with Sergeant Rock was a nice touch.
I mean, he goes back to almost the Silver Age, does he not?
Does he?
Well,
has Ordway been trying that long? I thought maybe 70s.
Yeah, I thought you go back to at least the 80s though. So at least Bronze Age, I would say.
Yeah.
So he's been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you have this idea that was it Degaton is like jumping around time, and he's watching the Sergeant Rock stuff, and he's like, we get a little bit of his backstory, which is what the Sergeant Rock stuff at the start sets up, is how he sort of began his journey, which I thought was nice, because it was like, okay, if you haven't read all this classic GSA stuff, this is a nice, like, okay, here's your context, here's who this guy is. He was a Nazi scientist. He escaped capture by jumping through time, and then became this GSA villain, right? So you get all this, but you also get the main part of the issue, which is Huntress with present day GSA. She's with a couple of characters. She's with Deadman and Chimp and whatever. But then she gets taken to the GSA, and they're like, "Wait, you're Catwoman's daughter? Are you Huntress's daughter?" And he's like, "No, I'm Catwoman's daughter." And I think it's Deadman says, "I think I can guess who the dad is." And then there's a bit of a debate of like, do we tell Batman about her?
Yeah.
And she says no, don't tell him, because this is it's GSA business, but also probably murky from a timeline perspective to start involving her parents in this shit. So
for sure. And what I like too is that she brings up the snow globe, which is the unifying thing right now between Johns' work. Yeah, which I just think is hilarious.
And we know Stargirl's coming into it based on the solicits, so
yeah. So, but yeah, the snow globe that we saw there, she has it, and she kind of uses this as what does she use it for? She doesn't know. Well, because she hands them the glove, and they're going to take it to Madame Xanadu.
Yeah, she doesn't use it for anything, which is why I was confused by what you were saying there. No. She gives it to them, and they're going to take it to Xanadu to have a look at it. But this actually alerts Degaton, where he like feels that it's not with her anymore. So he comes to the present day. The big cliffhanger is that he shows up and is like, "All right, I'm going to kill you all," basically. A lot of the middle of the issue though is when Huntress goes to meet the GSA. They're in the middle of a fight with a bunch of Bizarro. And it's basically just that classic thing where she one by one looks at the different members and kind of talks about them and her experiences with them, because they're all older from where she comes from. She talks about how she never met this wildcat, but she how Jakeem's change in the future. Basically just giving us all this sort of interesting little bits of mythology of like how the GSA is going to change in the future. I think honestly the most interesting thing for me though was that all of this stuff kind of established that this is set in main continuity in the future. So obviously it's all subject to change because it's the future, but they are saying that this is because when they bring up the previous Huntress, they say, oh yeah, I was kind of inspired by her, but they established that this is mainline continuity Batman and Catwoman's daughter. This is not Earth 2. This is not anything else.
This is Earth. What is it, Earth Zero still?
It is Earth Zero still.
DC? Yeah. It's Earth Zero, but because of how we saw that diagram in Stargirl of the hyper time and the time versus space, she's like an offshoot reality now of the future, because this future still might never come to pass, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, by the end of the story, who knows? Maybe she'll be integrated into the main timeline.
Yeah. I do like how she talks about the members of the Justice Society. I like when John does this, because it kind of tips his hand a little about what he would like to do with some of these characters. So it talks about she learned never to get lost in the darkness because of Stargirl. So I just like that idea that Stargirl becomes like a mentor to Helena.
And it makes sense because she'll be, much older for her.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
and then like talks about the Thunderbolt. Is that Jakeem Thunder and I always forget the Thunderbolt's name, but they end up fusing and becoming like one of the most powerful heroes. And again, I like that. That's like because the Thunderbolt's powered by like magic of, I forget what exactly does it, but it's like this hopeful thing, right? That he can use this. It's kind of like to make things happen, and just the fact that they eventually merge and become like one of the greatest heroes. It feels like a very John Cena thing. So
yeah, and honestly, like this was a very easy to read issue. It kind of slowed because the first issue was like. Not hard to read, but it was jumping all over the place. That's felt like the issue that slowed down and really let us catch our bearings. It kind of made it clear who who the villain was if you don't know who he is, and it also just like really establishes, okay, we're in present day now. Here's the present day JSA, which is kind of what we I suppose wanted from the JSA book in the first place. And honestly, the art in this sort of big fight is it's sort of like just going through all the members of the current JSA, and just even just for us establishes who's currently in it because. Yeah, okay, we assume Alan and we assume Power Girl and Jay, but it's like, okay, so we're establishing that young Khalid, Dr. Fate's here, Yolanda, Wildcat's here, Stargirl is in the current JS. It's establishing all these things where we didn't even know for sure what the roster was going into this book. So this was good to finally nail all that.
It's a nice guidepost type of issue to let you know where we are and stuff. And
they all look great. Yannen's art on this stuff's all beautiful.
The way that he draws the JSA, right? Like, it's just his fate especially is so, because it is different than it is the Helm of Naboo, right? But he draws it in a different way that it makes it unique to Khalid. So like for a fact this is the Khalid version, because I'm sure we're gonna be doing timey-wimey stuff. We're gonna have multiple members of the
for sure
eras at the same time. So I like that that's here. And then when we get back to the the 1945 stuff, like it seems similar to the Ordway stuff at the beginning, but it's that Janin style. So it's a little bit more sketchy, but it's that Janin clean.
Yeah, Joe, I think's interesting about that. Yeah, so just to clarify what you're saying here is that the opening of the book, which is set in the 40s, and it's it's the Sergeant Rock, and it's the origin of Degaton, and it's going after the Nazi scientist. That's the Jerry Ordway art. There is one page though here. Just before it goes back to the the GSA headquarters, the Brownstone, where it's again back in 1945, and it's right after Sergeant Rock's died, and Degaton's watching, and he's talking about how in his narration that I used to think about intervening and like helping the Nazis win World War II, but I don't care about that anymore. I just care about me. Blah blah blah. This page isn't Ordway. This page is Yannin. And what I thought was interesting about this is that it was kind of like a little distinction that shows that the first part was just the art or just the story of when it happened, whereas this is specifically when someone from the future's looking at it because they're traveling through time. So it's a different art style to fit into like that modern perspective. I don't know. It's an interesting little touch actually that kind of makes it work.
I mean, it's the creative team playing with perspective and time. Yeah. And all this other stuff, but it also helps you keep your bearings because like now this is a future version of Degaton. This is one that's been jumping around time.
Yeah. This is the one that killed the future GSA. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that's been following Helena through her life. The scary man that she keeps seeing. But yeah, and it ends with him popping up in the JSA Brownstone.
Yeah, he's literally on the. He's hovering table. A little bit above it, but yeah, he's like on the table, the round table, and he's like, nice to see you all in your prime before I kill you all. Pretty much. Says next the death of the JSA. I'm sure it won't pan out exactly like that, but it does feel like that orb was protecting Huntress from him, and because it's been handed off to go and to someone else. He's popped in quite happily here. So we'll see how this goes. It does feel like we're probably still going to jump through time, but I think this issue spends so much time establishing the present day GSA. I don't think they're just going to be gone from the issue once Huntress might jump again next time. I feel like they're still going to be important to the overall story. Yeah,
the fact that they're talking about other members needing to be there too. Like, should we get Ted involved and they talk about getting Hourman because Hourman's done this a few times. It tells me that we are going to get a Justice League uniting to figure this out in
Justice
League,
times. Matt.
Justice Society.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Just keeping you right.
Yeah, I got you. But also, Helena mentioning that like her Justice League was killed by these guys or by this guy, and what's that mean in the future, and how they can prevent that from happening if they even can, because is it one of those things that's set in is that one of those things that's set like concrete, or is it a thing that's malleable? So
there is no fate in that, but what we make.
Yes, right. But also I like that it's playing with the Stargirl stuff as well, right? Like we see the snow globe and we get Stargirl in here, and see how that informs, if anything that she went through with the childminder and that timey-wimey, if like that they reveal.
Well, here's my question: issue. Has that already happened to Stargirl?
Right,
here?
Or is it yet to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right, because there's a big reveal at the end of that issue with with the thing that like, is that character going to have anything to do in here?
Yeah, which would definitely, like, you think Stargirl might have something to say if she's already been through that. But then we may also, I mean, the end of that Stargirl book might reveal that he really wasn't either him
that right?
Yeah, or he was doing it for this reason that's understandable, or something. I don't know.
Or because of timey-wimey space-time things, it's a different version of that.
Yeah.
This is all at play now, but like, is this a Stargirl that has been through that? Is she going to recognize that snow globe?
I mean,
right? Like,
it could be that everything's in flux, and that timeline that Stargirl's mini's taking place in actually won't happen now, but is still relevant because of what happened in it. The reason why I say that is because it didn't feel like she was part of a JSA at the start of that mini. It didn't feel like she was going to like the JSA meetings, which makes me feel like this is set later, but at the same time, there's been no reference to it yet.
No, because she was sneaking out of the house still, right? Like, she's not supposed to be a superhero. She's supposed to be at school.
Exactly, yeah.
At the beginning of that, that's why her and Red Arrow can go out and do all that. So I don't know. I feel like when Johns is writing these stories on multiple levels like this is the type of stuff that I'm really drawn to. This is like when he was doing Blackest Night and Green Lantern, and when informing the other. So it, like, you don't have to read both, but it definitely makes for a better experience if you are.
Yeah, no, I really like this issue. It's probably my favorite of the three, just because it was a bit more focused in. It's hinting at kind of some of the futures for some of these JSA members, and it kind of said, hey, no, this is in continuity, or at least it's is now
a similar continuity that we're familiar with.
I don't know, because they straight up referenced one or two things that no, because at one point they referenced the Lazarus thing. Huntress says, that's
right, the Lazarus.
Yeah, she says, the Lazarus thing must have already happened. She says that. Right. So this is absolutely in mainline continuity. Maybe by the time it ends, it won't be, because it'll go off and do something. But right now, it's in continuity. Things.
Yeah.
So that's very curious.
Yeah.
All right. What are you rating Justice Society of America issue 1?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
I'm happy to give this another 8.5. I really enjoyed this issue.